The interview lasted 3 minutes. The consequences would change an entire star system. The rain tapped softly against the glass dome of Voss Interstellar Headquarters, turning the sprawling skyline of Meridian Prime into a blur of silver lights and distant shadows. Hundreds of feet below, streams of hover traffic moved through the evening mist while inside the executive tower. Arya Voss stared at the final application resting on the transparent surface of her desk. The room smelled faintly of recycled air and fresh coffee. Soft white lighting reflected off polished metal walls lined with awards, trade licenses, and portraits of previous Voss family executives. Normally, hiring a bodyguard was a formality. Today felt different. "This is the last candidate," her assistant said quietly. The others declined. Arya leaned back in her chair. "Decline the salary?" The assistant nodded. "And the risk assessment?" That earned a slight frown. The position offered nearly 500,000 credits annually. People usually competed for contracts like this. Instead, 11 highly trained security specialists had turned it down within 48 hours. Some cited scheduling conflicts. Others simply stopped returning calls. Arya suspected there was another reason. Ever since rumors surfaced that someone was targeting her shipping routes, qualified professionals had become surprisingly unavailable. She glanced at the final file. Ethan Hayes, human, 34 years old, former recon Marine, security consultant. The attached photograph showed a broad-shouldered man with short blonde hair, calm blue eyes, and an expression that looked more tired than intimidating. Nothing about him stood out. No medals displayed. No dramatica quelats. No attempt to impress. Just a plain black suit and a neutral expression. "Send him in," Arya said. The door opened with a soft hydraulic hiss. Ethan entered without hurry. His footsteps were measured, controlled, the kind of walk that suggested he never needed to prove anything to anyone. Arya studied him carefully. He appeared larger in person, not because of muscle, although there was plenty of that beneath the tailored suit. It was the stillness that made him seem bigger. Most applicants entered executive offices trying to project confidence. Ethan simply existed within the room as if he belonged there. "Mr. Hayes," Arya said. "Ms. Voss." His voice was deep and even. American accent. Earthborn. He sat only after she gestured toward the chair. Another small detail. Most candidates rushed to fill silence. Ethan seemed perfectly comfortable with it. Arya opened the digital file. Large sections had been redacted. Entire pages hidden behind security clearance restrictions. That annoyed her immediately. "Your military history is classified?" "Parts of it." "What?" Ethan shrugged once. "Government paperwork." The answer almost made her smile, despite herself. "You realize this position involves protecting the CEO of one of the largest shipping corporations in the sector. I read the job description. And you still applied. Someone has to." Outside, distant thunder rolled across the city. Arya tapped the edge of the file. Most experienced contractors refused this assignment. "I noticed. Doesn't that concern you?" Ethan looked toward the rain-streaked window. "Concern is healthy. Panic is expensive." For the first time all evening, Arya laughed. "Just a little." The assistant looked surprised. So did she. Ethan's expression never changed. "Tell me something, Mr. Hayes." "Sure. Why should I hire you?" He thought about it for several seconds, not pretending to think, actually thinking, "Because if something goes wrong, I'll still be there." The answer hung in the room. No sales pitch, no promises, no dramatic claims, just certainty. Arya studied him again. She had spent years negotiating with politicians, corporate executives, and foreign dignitaries. She knew confidence when she saw it. This felt different. Not confidence, experience. The kind earned through difficult places and long years. Her gaze drifted to a single line near the bottom of the application. Planet of origin, Earth. Nothing unusual there. Humans were everywhere now. Traders, engineers, pilots, scientists. Yet for some reason, that detail seemed oddly emphasized in the file, as if someone wanted it noticed. "One last question," Arya said. "Why leave the military?" Ethan's eyes shifted toward her. For the first time, she saw something behind them. A shadow. A memory. Gone almost immediately. It was time. The silence that followed felt heavier than the question itself. Eventually, Arya closed the file. Congratulations, Mr. Hayes. He stood. I got the job. You're the only candidate who actually showed up. That finally earned the faintest hint of a smile. Barely visible. Fair enough. As Ethan signed the contract, neither of them noticed the alert arriving on a secure government network 3 sectors away. A warning flagged for executive review. One sentence attached to Ethan Hayes' personnel record. One sentence that never reached Arya Voss. Subject originates from a Class 12 death world. Recommendation. Inform employer immediately. The first assignment arrived less than 12 hours after Ethan signed the contract. The morning sky above Meridian Prime glowed pale gold behind layers of drifting cloud as Arya's executive shuttle descended toward the commercial district. The vessel hummed softly beneath their feet, its navigation systems projecting streams of data across the cockpit displays. Arya reviewed financial reports on her tablet, while Ethan occupied the seat nearest the exit hatch. He had not spoken much since boarding. He simply watched. Watched the traffic. Watched the passengers. Watched reflections in the windows. Watched everything. After 20 minutes, Arya finally lowered the tablet. Do you ever relax? Ethan glanced toward her. Sometimes. That was not convincing. It was not supposed to be. She shook her head. You know, most bodyguards try harder to impress their employers. Most employers do not hire me for conversation. Before Arya could reply, a warning tone echoed through the cabin. The pilot immediately stiffened. A flashing icon appeared on the main display. Traffic control alert, he announced. Wildlife sighting near landing zone 3. Arya frowned. Wildlife. Probably nothing serious, the pilot said. Just a local predator wandering too close to the cargo terminals. The shuttle continued its descent. Through the viewport, Arya could see hundreds of workers moving between warehouses and transport docks. Massive cargo carriers rested on elevated platforms, while loading cranes stretched toward the cloudy sky like metallic giants. Everything looked normal. Then she noticed people running. Not panicked, not screaming, just moving away from one section of the terminal with surprising urgency. The pilot noticed it too. That is unusual. Ethan had already stood up. Keep the shuttle in the air. The pilot blinked. What? Do not land yet. His voice remained calm. Circle once. Arya exchanged a look with the pilot. Is something wrong? Ethan studied the scene below. Maybe. The shuttle banked gently left. As they passed over the terminal, Arya finally saw what had caught his attention. Near a cluster of shipping containers stood a creature unlike anything she had encountered before. It moved on 4 powerful legs. Dark gray fur covered its body. A long tail swept behind it, while workers carefully created distance. Security personnel maintained a perimeter several hundred feet away. Nobody appeared injured. Nobody appeared frightened. They simply seemed cautious. What is that? Arya asked. The pilot pulled up a data file. His eyes widened. A bracker. Is that bad? Not exactly, the pilot replied. They're native to this continent, usually found hundreds of miles from urban areas. Ethan continued watching. How large? The pilot scanned the report. 800 pounds. Maybe 900. Arya expected concern. Instead, Ethan nodded, as if discussing the weather. That explains it. Explains what? She asked. Why everyone is staying back. The bracker slowly wandered between stacks of cargo containers. It did not appear aggressive. Just lost. Confused. Searching for a way out. Can security remove it? Arya asked. Eventually, the pilot said. Animal specialists are on the way. Ethan picked up his jacket. Good. Good. Arya repeated. Then nobody will bother it until they arrive. Something in his answer surprised her. Not because of what he said, because of how he said it. The concern in his voice was not for the workers. It was for the animal. The shuttle completed another circle. Below them, security vehicles continued positioning themselves around the wandering creature. Ethan remained standing near the hatch, silently observing. A few moments later, the bracker disappeared behind a warehouse. The terminal slowly returned to normal operations. Arya looked toward Ethan. You seem remarkably calm about a 900-pound predator. Compared to what? She folded her arms. Compared to normal predators. Ethan considered that for a second. Back home, we had bears. Bears. Some weighed over 1,000 pounds. Arya stared at him. You were joking. No. And people lived near them? Sometimes. Voluntarily? Usually. For the first time since hiring him, Arya found herself wondering whether the strange note in his personnel file mattered more than she originally thought. Outside the shuttle windows, Meridian Prime stretched toward the horizon beneath layers of silver cloud. Somewhere beyond those clouds existed an entire galaxy filled with civilized worlds. Yet sitting across from her was a man who talked about 1,000-pound predators the same way someone else might discuss neighborhood pets. And for reasons she could not explain, that realization was becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. The meeting concluded shortly after noon. By the time Arya and Ethan returned to Voss Interstellar Headquarters, sunlight had broken through the cloud cover and spilled across the upper levels of the city. The executive tower gleamed against the skyline like polished silver. Employees moved through the corridors carrying tablets and data slates, while distant elevators hummed behind transparent walls. Everything felt normal, almost too normal. Arya stood inside her private office overlooking the city and replayed the morning conversation in her head. Bears. 1,000 pounds. People living near them on purpose. The more she thought about it, the less sense it made. A soft chime interrupted her thoughts. Come in. The office door slid open. An elderly visitor entered carrying a walking cane crafted from dark crystalline wood. His silver hair rested neatly across his shoulders, and his formal academic robes displayed the insignias of several respected universities. Arya immediately recognized him. Professor Malcolm Rayner, one of the foremost xenobiologists in the sector. Professor, she said with a smile, I was not expecting you. Neither was I, the old man admitted. Your assistant informed me you had recently hired new security personnel. Arya glanced toward the lounge area where Ethan stood near the window reviewing security reports. The professor followed her gaze. The moment his eyes settled on Ethan, something changed. Not fear, not surprise, recognition. Ethan noticed him as well. Professor Rayner. Mr. Hayes. The old man chuckled softly. It has been many years. Arya looked between them. You know each other? Briefly, the professor replied. I once participated in a government research program involving interspecies adaptation studies. Ethan sighed. That sounds more impressive than it was. You carried a wounded scientist 3 miles through a storm. The vehicle broke down. Most people would have waited for rescue. Ethan shrugged. It was faster to walk. The professor laughed. Arya did not. 3 miles through a storm sounded significant. Ethan acted as though he had carried groceries across a parking lot. Professor Rayner lowered himself into a chair. Forgive my curiosity, Ms. Voss, but were you informed of Mr. Hayes' place of origin? Earth, Arya answered. Of course. The professor became unusually quiet. He adjusted his glasses and studied her carefully. And nobody explained what that means. Arya frowned. I am beginning to suspect there is more to that question than there should be. The old man exchanged a glance with Ethan. Ethan looked toward the window. Professor. I know, the professor said gently. I know. Arya folded her arms. Would somebody please tell me what is happening? The professor leaned forward. Ms. Voss, have you ever heard the term death world? The office suddenly felt quieter. Even the distant sounds of traffic seemed to fade. I have heard the classification, Arya said. Extremely hazardous planetary environments. Correct. Most species avoid them. Correct again. What does that have to do with Earth? The professor blinked. Then he smiled in disbelief. Everything. Arya looked at Ethan. Ethan rubbed the back of his neck, as if wishing he were somewhere else. It is not a big deal, he said. The professor nearly dropped his cane. Not a big deal. He laughed so hard that tears briefly appeared in his eyes. Mr. Hayes, your species evolved on a planet where gravity exceeds galactic standard by nearly 40%. Your oceans contain predators larger than transport vehicles. Your atmosphere produces electrical storms visible from orbit. Your ecosystems are in constant competition with themselves. Adiasterd. That cannot be real. It is. All of it. That is the simplified version. Ethan looked mildly embarrassed. Earth has some rough spots. Some rough spots. The professor repeated. My dear woman, half the galaxy studies humanity because your existence contradicts common evolutionary theory. Silence settled over the office. Outside the windows, thousands of vehicles crossed the afternoon sky. Business continued. Trade continued. Life continued. Yet Arya suddenly felt as though she had been handed a puzzle piece that changed the entire picture. She slowly turned toward Ethan. The same calm expression, the same quiet posture, the same ordinary man she had hired 2 days earlier. Nothing about him looked different, and somehow that made the revelation even stranger. Nobody told me any of this, she said quietly. The professor smiled. That, Ms. Voss, is because humans rarely think any of it is unusual. That evening, long after the executive floors had emptied and the city lights began glowing beneath the darkening sky, Arya sat alone in her office, surrounded by floating data screens. The room was illuminated only by the soft blue glow of research files scrolling across transparent displays. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, Meridian Prime shimmered beneath layers of mist and distant traffic lanes. Inside, Arya was learning that everything she thought she knew about humanity had been incomplete. One report described Earth's gravity. Another detailed atmospheric conditions. A third examined the planet's biodiversity. Each document seemed more unbelievable than the last. She stared at a chart comparing average gravitational environments across the galactic coalition. Most inhabited worlds clustered within a narrow range. Earth sat far above the norm. 40% higher, she whispered. Her eyes moved to the next file. The average human cardiovascular system. Bone density. Muscle composition. Immune response. Every category carried notes from researchers attempting to explain how humans functioned under conditions that many species considered hazardous. A notification appeared in the corner of her screen. Earth Weather Archive. Curious, she opened it. Images flooded the display. Hurricanes large enough to cover entire states. Blizzards burying towns beneath feet of snow. Deserts stretching hundreds of miles beneath relentless heat. Oceans producing waves taller than buildings. She zoomed into one image showing a small boat crossing rough water. People actually live there, she muttered. Voluntarily. Usually, Ethan's voice came from behind her. Arya nearly jumped. She turned to find him standing near the doorway, holding 2 steaming cups. You need to stop doing that. Ethan handed her one of the cups. Doing what? Appearing without making a sound. The door opened. Barely. He glanced toward the research displays. Looks like you found the Earth files. You knew about these? Most humans do. Arya laughed softly. That is not reassuring. Ethan pulled a chair closer and sat down. The city lights reflected in the window behind him. For a moment, he looked less like a bodyguard and more like an old friend stopping by after work. The thought surprised her. They had known each other less than a week. Tell me something, she said. What? Were you aware your species terrifies scientists? Ethan smiled into his coffee. Scientists are easy to terrify. I'm serious. So am I. Arya shook her head. One report described Earth as an ecological arms race that never stopped. That sounds accurate. Another called humanity an evolutionary anomaly. Also accurate. Does none of this seem strange to you? Ethan thought for a moment. Not really. Why not? He looked out the window. Because when you grow up somewhere, it feels normal. The answer lingered in the room. Arya considered it carefully. Maybe he was right. Every species viewed its home through familiar eyes. Yet there was something remarkable about how casually Ethan discussed things that researchers devoted entire careers to studying. What was it like? She asked quietly. Earth. Yes. Ethan smiled faintly. Not the guarded smile he used during meetings. A genuine one. Loud, loud. Dogs barking. Kids playing basketball in the street. Lawnmowers. Thunderstorms. Music from somebody's garage. His eyes softened. My neighborhood smelled like rain and barbecue during the summer. Adia listened. No stories about military operations. No tales of heroics. Just simple memories. Human memories. You miss it. Ethan nodded. Every day. The city lights flickered beyond the glass. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. The silence felt comfortable. Unexpectedly comfortable. Then Arya noticed something. Every report she had read focused on humanity's strength, resilience, and survival. None mentioned the details Ethan remembered. Not the rain. Not the neighborhoods. Not the music. Not the people. The files explained how humans survive their world. Ethan reminded her why they loved it. And somehow, that felt far more important. The following morning arrived wrapped in silver fog. From the upper floors of Voss Interstellar Headquarters, the city looked as though it were floating above a sea of clouds. Arya stood beside the observation glass, watching sunlight slowly burn through the haze, while dozens of cargo vessels traced glowing paths across the sky. Normally, she would have spent the morning reviewing contracts and trade agreements. Instead, she found herself thinking about a neighborhood on Earth that smelled like rain and barbecue. The thought felt strangely personal. A soft vibration interrupted her reflection. An incoming schedule update appeared on her tablet. A diplomatic reception had been added to the afternoon agenda. Representatives from multiple systems would attend. Investors, trade officials, transportation regulators. Exactly the kind of event she usually handled with ease. Yet when she glanced toward the security section of the report, her attention immediately settled on one name. Ethan Hayes. She still found that surprising. Only days ago, he had been another employee, another contract, another professional obligation. Now she found herself wondering what stories existed behind the calm expression he carried everywhere. When she entered the executive conference room later that morning, Ethan was already there reviewing venue schematics projected across a transparent display wall. Security routes glowed in blue, emergency exits in green, visitor access points in white. He studied every detail with the same quiet focus he seemed to bring to everything. "You got here early," Arya said. "Habit. Military. Probably." She walked closer. "Do you ever stop analyzing rooms?" Ethan looked around. "Not really. That sounds exhausting." "You get used to it." Arya studied the projection. "Anything concerning?" "No." He pointed toward a service corridor on the map. "I just want staff movement redirected through a different hallway." "Why?" "Less congestion." That is it. That is it." Arya laughed softly. "You know, most people would not notice something like that. Most people are busy doing other things." The answer sounded simple. Yet she was beginning to realize how much of Ethan's effectiveness came from noticing details everyone else ignored. By afternoon, the reception hall buzzed with conversation. Crystal chandeliers suspended from the ceiling cast warm light across polished floors while diplomats and executives exchanged greetings beneath banners representing dozens of worlds. Music drifted quietly through hidden speakers. Servers carried trays of refreshments between clusters of guests. Ethan remained nearby, but never intrusive. Sometimes he stood 20 feet away, sometimes 50, yet somehow Arya always knew exactly where he was. During a conversation with a shipping consortium representative, she noticed several guests approaching Ethan near one of the observation windows. Curious, she watched from across the room. The first was a young trade official. The second appeared to be a university researcher. Within minutes, a small group had formed around him. They were smiling, asking questions, listening intently. Arya eventually drifted closer. "What is happening over here?" she asked. The researcher laughed. Mr. Hayes was explaining baseball. Ethan sighed. "I made one mistake." "You told them humans voluntarily throw a ball at each other for entertainment," Arya said. "That was accurate." Then somebody asked follow-up questions, Ethan replied. The group laughed. For the next several minutes, Arya listened as Ethan described road trips, state fairs, football games, backyard cookouts, and family holidays. Not military operations, not survival stories, just ordinary moments. Yet every guest seemed fascinated. Arya slowly realized why. Most reports describe humanity through statistics and research papers. Ethan described humans through people, through memories, through experiences, through laughter. The difference mattered. As the evening progressed, the reception hall gradually emptied. One by one the guests departed until only a handful remained. Arya stood near the window overlooking the city. Lights stretched to the horizon like rivers of gold. Ethan approached carrying 2 cups of coffee. "You seem to do that a lot," she said. "Do what?" "Show up with coffee." He handed one to her. "You seem to drink it a lot." Arya smiled. The city glowed beyond the glass. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence felt easy, comfortable. Then she glanced toward him. "You know," she said quietly, "when I hired you, I thought I was getting a bodyguard." Ethan took a sip from his cup, and Arya looked out across the endless lights of Meridian Prime. "Now I think I'm learning about an entire world." 3 days later, the first sign that something was wrong arrived, disguised as routine paperwork. The morning began quietly. Rain drifted across the glass walls of Voss Interstellar Headquarters, while cargo reports flowed through company networks and transport schedules updated across dozens of systems. Arya sat in a conference room reviewing expansion proposals when a notification appeared on her tablet. Another appeared seconds later. Then another. Small delays. Minor routing issues. Nothing serious individually. Together, they formed a pattern. Across the room, Ethan noticed her expression change. "Problem?" he asked. "Maybe." She rotated the tablet toward him. 3 separate shipping hubs reported communication failures overnight. Ethan studied the reports. "All connected to your company?" "Indirectly. Same time frame." Arya nodded. "Within 4 hours." Ethan remained silent for several seconds. "That is not random." The words settled heavily in the room. Arya had reached the same conclusion, but hearing someone else say it made the concern feel real. An emergency meeting followed. Department heads joined through holographic links. Analysts compared data streams. Engineers checked network integrity. Everyone searched for technical explanations. Nobody found one. By late afternoon, rain still covered the city. Gray clouds pressed low against the skyline, while distant thunder rolled across Meridian Prime. Arya finally left the conference center exhausted. Her shoulders ached. Her eyes burned from staring at displays for hours. Ethan walked beside her through a nearly empty corridor. "You should go home," he said. That sounded suspiciously like an order. Recommendation. Better. They reached the executive elevator. Before the doors opened, Ethan suddenly stopped walking. Not dramatically, just enough to notice. His gaze shifted toward a maintenance hallway branching away from the main corridor. Arya followed his eyes. "What?" Ethan listened. The building ventilation hummed softly overhead. Somewhere in the distance, an elevator moved between floors. Everything seemed normal. "Probably nothing," he said. Yet he remained focused on the hallway. A technician emerged moments later carrying equipment cases. Ethan relaxed immediately. "See?" Arya asked. "Nothing." "Good." The elevator doors opened. As they descended through the tower, Arya studied him. "You heard something." "Maybe." "What?" Ethan shrugged. "An unusual echo." "An echo." "Footsteps." "Movement." "Hard to explain." Arya stared. "You can identify people from echoes?" "Sometimes." "That is ridiculous." "Probably." Yet his expression suggested otherwise. By the time they reached the parking platform, evening had settled across the city. Thousands of lights shimmered beneath the rain, while streams of hover traffic moved through the darkness. Their shuttle waited nearby. Security personnel completed routine checks before departure. Everything appeared normal. Then a message arrived. Ethan received it first. His tablet emitted a sharp notification tone. He glanced at the screen. The relaxed expression disappeared instantly. Not fear, not alarm. Focus. Pure focus. "What happened?" Arya asked. Ethan turned the display toward her. A government security advisory filled the screen. "Unauthorized access attempt detected. Source unknown. Target: Voss Interstellar Executive Communications. Time stamp: 11 minutes earlier." Arya felt her stomach tighten. "Someone accessed my network?" "Tried to." "Did they succeed?" "According to this report, no." Ethan continued reading. Rain tapped softly against the shuttle windows. But somebody wanted in. Neither spoke for several seconds. Across the platform, lightning flashed behind distant clouds. The city briefly glowed silver. Arya looked toward Ethan. This is connected to the shipping disruptions. I think so. You sound certain. Ethan slipped the tablet into his jacket pocket. Because people do not test doors unless they plan to come back later. The shuttle engines activated with a low vibration beneath their feet. Outside, Meridian Prime continued moving through another ordinary evening. Millions of people went about their lives unaware that invisible forces were beginning to shift beneath the surface. And for the first time since hiring Ethan Hayes, Arya realized the threats surrounding her might be far larger than delayed shipments or missing data. Somewhere in the darkness, someone was watching. Someone was planning. And, judging by the look in Ethan's eyes, he had started watching back. The next 48 hours felt strangely quiet. Too quiet. The network intrusion attempt remained unresolved. Investigators found no clear source. The disrupted shipping routes slowly returned to normal operations. Department heads reassured investors. Analysts published optimistic forecasts. On paper, everything appeared stable. Yet, Ethan trusted patterns more than reports, and the pattern bothered him. Late on the second evening, rain once again covered Meridian Prime. Thin streams of water slid down the glass walls of the executive residence attached to headquarters, while distant lightning flickered beyond the skyline. Arya sat in the dining area reviewing quarterly projections. Ethan stood near the window, watching the city below. "You have been staring outside for 20 minutes, Arya said. "Probably. That is not normal. Depends on the day." She lowered her tablet. "You think something is coming?" Ethan remained silent for a moment. Yes. The honesty surprised her. He usually softened concerns with humor. Not this time. Because of the network breach? Partly. What else? Ethan turned toward her. The timing. Explain. He walked to the table and activated a holographic display. Shipping disruptions appeared first. Then communication outages. Then the attempted access to executive systems. Each incident connected through thin lines of light. Individually, none of these accomplish much, Ethan said. Together, they create confusion. Arya studied the projection. You think someone is testing responses. I think someone is learning. The room grew quiet. Rain tapped softly against the windows. Somewhere deeper inside the building, an elevator chimed. Ordinary sounds. Yet the conversation made them feel different. Learning what? Arya asked. How your company reacts under pressure. Before she could answer, another notification appeared. Priority message. Internal security channel. Ethan opened it immediately. His expression hardened. What happened? Arya asked. A senior logistics director resigned. That is not unusual. 3 more resigned within the last hour. Arya sat up straighter. What? Ethan expanded the report. Additional names appeared. Experienced personnel. Department supervisors. Regional managers. Employees who had worked for Voss Interstellar for years. This does not make sense, Arya said. Exactly. She immediately opened communication links. Calls were placed. Messages sent. Most went unanswered. Those who responded sounded nervous. Distracted. Several offered vague explanations. Family matters. Better opportunities. Personal reasons. None felt convincing. An hour later, Arya and Ethan stood inside the Executive Operations Center. Massive displays covered the walls. Data streams flowed across transparent screens while a skeleton knight staff monitored incoming reports. The atmosphere felt tense. Not panicked, just uncertain. One analyst approached carrying a tablet. Ms. Voss, what is it? We found something. The analyst transferred a series of financial records onto the main display. Transactions appeared across multiple systems. Shell corporations, investment groups, private acquisitions. At first glance, they seemed unrelated. Then a pattern emerged. Every company had recently acquired influence over businesses connected to Voss Interstellar. Shipping suppliers, fuel contractors, maintenance providers. Piece by piece, quietly, carefully, Arya felt cold. Someone is building leverage. Ethan nodded. Now we know the objective. Control. Looks that way. The analyst swallowed nervously. There is more. Another document appeared. This one contained a list of executive personnel. Names highlighted in red. Arya recognized every one of them. Current employees, former employees, advisors, consultants, people close to the company. Where did this come from, she asked. Recovered from the intrusion attempt. Silence settled across the operations center. The realization arrived slowly. The network breach had never been about stealing data. The shipping disruptions had never been about transportation. Someone had been mapping the company itself, learning its structure, identifying weaknesses, studying people, and suddenly the target seemed obvious. Arya stared at the glowing list. Her own name sat at the very top. Across the room, rain continued tapping against the windows while thunder rolled somewhere beyond the city. Ethan looked at the display for several seconds before speaking. His voice remained calm, almost gentle. This was never about the company. Arya looked at him. No, Ethan said quietly. It was always about you. The storm finally broke just before dawn. Rain hammered the upper levels of Meridian Prime, while sheets of silver water raced across the glass exterior of Voss Interstellar Headquarters. Inside the operations center, nobody had gone home. Analysts worked through the night. Security specialists reviewed records. Executives monitored financial activity across multiple systems. The deeper they looked, the clearer the picture became. Someone had spent months positioning assets around Voss Interstellar. Quiet acquisitions, strategic investments, carefully placed influence. It was not an attack designed to destroy the company. It was an attempt to take it over. Arya stood near the central display staring at the growing web of connections. How much of this do they control? She asked. One analyst answered without looking up. Enough to become dangerous. Not enough to win. Ethan folded his arms. Yet, the room fell silent. Everybody understood what that meant. A message arrived moments later. Priority transmission. Direct channel. No identification attached. Every screen in the operations center suddenly displayed the same image. A corporate seal. Unfamiliar. Elegant. Expensive. Then a face appeared. A well-dressed executive with gray hair and a calm smile. Good morning, Ms. Voss. Arya narrowed her eyes. Who are you? Someone attempting to avoid unnecessary conflict. That usually means the opposite. The man smiled slightly. Perhaps. His voice remained polite. Professional. Your company occupies a valuable position within interstellar commerce. Unfortunately, your leadership structure has become inefficient. Several executives in the room exchanged irritated looks. The man continued. We have acquired significant influence among your partners. Investors, suppliers, contractors. Given enough time, transition of ownership becomes inevitable. Arya laughed once. You hacked my network to tell me that. I contacted you because I prefer cooperation. You want me to surrender my company. I want you to recognize reality. The transmission paused briefly. The man glanced toward someone off-screen before returning his attention to Arya. You are intelligent. You understand leverage. Ethan stepped forward. Then why hide? The executive finally noticed him. Mr. Hayes. The smile faded slightly. I wondered when you would speak. Ethan said nothing. The man studied him for a moment. You are creating complications. That sounds like a personal problem. Several analysts struggled not to smile. The executive ignored them. You misunderstand your position. This matter concerns corporate governance, not security personnel. Funny, Ethan replied. The security personnel keeps showing up in your reports. The room became very quiet. For the first time, the executive looked uncomfortable. Only slightly, but enough. Arya TONYKIET. So did everyone else. The transmission ended minutes later without threats, demands, or dramatic declarations. Yet the message was clear. Someone believed victory was only a matter of time. As technicians began analyzing the communication source, Arya walked toward one of the observation windows. Dawn light filtered through storm clouds beyond the city. He thinks he already won, she said quietly. Ethan joined her. Maybe, You do not sound worried. I am. Then why do you look calm? Ethan watched the rain slide down the glass. Because people make mistakes when they think they are ahead. Arya considered that. And he made one. Several. Such as. Ethan pointed toward the empty display behind them. He revealed himself. That seems obvious. Not really. Ethan looked toward her. For months, he controlled information. Controlled timing. Controlled perception. Then he got impatient. Arya realized he was right. The executive had spent months operating from the shadows. Now he wanted recognition. Validation. A visible victory. That was enough? She asked. Ethan smiled faintly. Back on Earth, there's an old saying. What saying? When somebody shows you who they are, pay attention. The rain gradually slowed outside. Sunlight began breaking through the clouds above Meridian Prime. Across the operations center, new reports started arriving. Investigators had identified financial pathways. Analysts had located hidden ownership structures. The picture was becoming clearer by the minute. The man who believed he had already won had finally stepped into the light. And for the first time since the crisis began, Arya noticed something unexpected in the room around her. Confidence. Not because the danger had disappeared. Not because the threat was smaller than expected. But because Ethan Hayes looked at the situation the same way he looked at everything else. Calm. Focused. Patient. As if the moment everyone else considered the beginning of a disaster was simply the moment he had been waiting for. The investigation moved quickly after that. Once the hidden ownership structures were exposed, regulators across multiple systems began asking questions. Investors demanded transparency. Partners who had quietly supported the takeover effort suddenly distanced themselves from it. Within days, the carefully constructed network that had seemed unstoppable started unraveling under public scrutiny. There were no dramatic confrontations, no grand speeches, just facts brought into the light. One by one, the advantages disappeared. A week later, Arya stood inside the same executive office where she had first interviewed Ethan Hayes. Morning sunlight poured through the glass walls. The city stretched endlessly beneath a clear blue sky. For the first time in what felt like months, Meridian Prime looked peaceful. A report rested on her desk. Final review. Final outcome. The attempted acquisition had failed. The outside corporation had withdrawn its claims. Several executives involved faced legal investigations. Shareholders voted to preserve Voss Interstellar's independence. The crisis was over. Arya slowly closed the report. She should have felt victorious. Instead, she felt thoughtful. The entire experience had changed something. Not just within her company. Within herself. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Come. Ethan entered carrying his usual cup of coffee. Some habits never changed. You look disappointed, he said. Disappointed? Most people celebrate when they win. Arya smiled faintly. Maybe I'm still processing everything. Ethan sat across from her. Fair. She studied him for a moment. Can I ask you something? Sure. When did you know we would be okay? Ethan considered the question. I did not. Really? Really? Arya looked surprised. You always seemed confident. Confidence and certainty are different things. The answer lingered between them. Outside, cargo vessels crossed the morning sky in long silver lines. Business had returned. Life had returned. Yet somehow the office felt quieter than before. Then why stay so calm? She asked. Ethan looked toward the city. Because panic does not solve problems. Arya laughed softly. That sounds annoyingly reasonable. I hear that a lot. Silence followed. Comfortable silence. The kind that no longer felt empty. Eventually, Arya opened a secure archive and searched Ethan's personnel file one final time. Most of the classified sections remained inaccessible, but a recently released document appeared near the bottom. She opened it. The screen filled with commendations. Civilian rescue operations. Disaster response missions. Evacuation assistance. Humanitarian deployments. Years of service. Years spent helping people. Ethan noticed her expression. What? You never told me any of this. He glanced at the screen. Nobody asked. Arya stared at him in disbelief. You helped thousands of people. Ethan shrugged. A lot of people helped me too. The simplicity of the answer hit harder than any official citation. There was again the thing every report failed to explain. Every researcher talked about human endurance, human adaptability, human strength. Yet the quality that kept revealing itself was something else entirely. Kindness. Ordinary kindness. Given freely, without expectation, without recognition. As the afternoon passed, Ethan eventually left to complete another security inspection. Arya remained by the window long after he was gone. The city glowed beneath the sunlight. Ships climbed toward the stars. People hurried through streets far below. She thought about Earth, about thunderstorms and neighborhoods and family cookouts, about a species that survived a world most civilizations considered impossible. Not because they were fearless, not because they were invincible, but because they kept moving forward together. Her gaze drifted toward a transport vessel ascending into the sky. For a brief moment, sunlight reflected across the glass and filled the office with gold. She remembered the first day she met Ethan Hayes. She had thought she was hiring a bodyguard. She had been wrong. She had hired a reminder that the most extraordinary thing about humanity was never their strength. It was the choice they made after discovering they had it. In a galaxy obsessed with power, humans remained something far rarer. They remembered mercy, and somehow, that made them impossible to defeat.